I saw this thread on Twitter, and I just wanted to read it to you because it is fascinating for those of you who love, like I do, church history. And that is from Dirk Jongkind. He wrote, "We all know the order of the books of the New Testament by heart. When the Tyndale House Greek New Testament," this is my Tyndale House Greek New Testament, my Jeffrey Rice version of the Tyndale House Greek New Testament. Probably the nicest. I'll bet you Dirk Jongkind does not have as nice an edition of his own Greek New Testament as I do. That's a good thought. Anyway, somebody else will end up with it someday anyways. But anyway, when the Tyndale House Greek New Testament was published, we changed the order and put James through Jude between Acts and Romans. Now, let me tell you something. The first time you open it up and try to, you're trying to find something, Acts takes you all the way. Okay, this is, I'll show you here. Here's the end of, Acts. All right, so you're over halfway through, and there's James, right after Acts. And you're like, and there's 1 Peter, and there's 2 Peter, and there's 1 John, and so and then there's Romans. There's 2nd and 3rd John, and then there's Romans. And you're like, you're thumbing through stuff going, what happened here? Has the canon been messed with? Well, okay. In the Greek manuscript tradition, Acts and James to Jude go together with few exceptions. But where this normal versus modern order of gospel, Acts, Romans come from? I always thought, this is Dirk Jongkind speaking, this was due to Latin influence, but it wasn't. Also in Vulgate manuscripts, James through Jude go with Acts, according to Carrer 2020. The correct answer surprised me. Our current order, ready, is solely an innovation by Erasmus. How stunning that one man's decision has such an enormous and largely unacknowledged influence on our Bibles. And then there's a reference to the study from this M. Carrer on the subject of Codex Reuchlin and so on and so forth. You can look up. So what he's saying is the order that we have in our modern New Testaments, where you go Acts, Romans, so on and so forth, which I'll be honest with you, makes more sense, really, when you think about it. Lengthwise, things like that. I think that makes sense to go from the story of Paul directly into the epistles of Paul. Also makes sense. Obviously, if you place a tremendous amount of weight upon the traditions of the early church, I don't think that anyone really has any idea as to why the ancient manuscripts had the order that they did, or why that would necessarily have some kind of, theological significance to it. Man, there are a lot of evangelicals that do think, however, that the order of the canon as it exists today, well, which didn't exist back then, but as it exists thanks to Erasmus, that has some theological significance to it. For example, how many times you heard somebody quote from the book of Revelation and quote from Revelation chapter 22 and say, hey, it says don't add or take away from the words of this book. And then I've actually heard people say, and I'm sure God knew, no matter when Revelation was written, I'm sure God knew it would be the last book of the New Testament. And therefore, they will read into that warning a pan-canonical aspect. Because the warning is about the book of Revelation. I mean, that's just, you've got to be fair. And lots of evangelicals try to span that out and say, see, this is about Revelation, ends right there, last book written, all that kind of stuff. And it's just not a defensible position, but people do it. And it's because, and I've often pointed out to people, the Jews did not have the same order of the Old Testament, the Hebrew scriptures, the Tanakh that we have. That's why people miss Jesus' statement in Matthew when he says the blood of Abel to the blood of Zechariah son of Berechiah slain before the altar will be held against this generation. They're like, who? I remember Abel. I was still awake. We got to Abel in Sunday school, but this other poor dude, I have no earthly idea. And that's because his story is found in a section of the Bible that a lot of Christians have never read. And that's in 2 Chronicles. But everybody in Jesus' day knew exactly what he was talking about because 2 Chronicles was the last book in the Hebrew canon. The Hebrew canon was the same as what we have today as Protestants, but in the order in which it's found. So you grab your Biblia Hebraica Stuttgartensia back there, and you start looking for books, and you have the same thing you run into here. It's like, why is the canon order different? And that's one of the reasons you study church history. So I thought that was an interesting thread, and it happened to pop back up on my feed right as we were getting started. I saw it this morning. I thought, oh, that's interesting. So I thought I would share that with you at that particular point in time.